now start to order. Well, before we I don't even have the thing with me. Do you have the agenda? Sure. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, thank you. Okay. All right. Can you do a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Ellis,
Present.
Mr. Servance, Ms. Stone,
Here.
Ms. Goodrich, Mr. Libby,
Here.
Ms. Flatley, Chairman Paspalakis.
Here. All right. Everybody received a copy of the minutes of the meeting. Are there any corrections?
I've got one.
Okay, you have one? Okay, go ahead.
On page 2, the second paragraph from the bottom states, it has it inverted. The problem there was that the tenant, who was the applicant before us that night, had impinged on property owned by Pinewood Cemetery, not the other way around.
Okay.
So if we could just, a couple of X's, and I think we'll have it correctly.
Okay. Is there a motion then to approve the minutes subject to the corrections that Mr. Libby just stated?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right. Before we go on to anything else, last time I was remiss. I have a police officer here, so let's go ahead and let him get on with his business.
Evening.
Good evening, folks. Sergeant Jasper, Supervisor. I was just asked to attend on behalf of Captain Loomis. She was busy this evening, so I just wanted to provide you with the stats. Year-to-date for District 2, the burglaries are down 51%. Total Part 1 crimes are down 26%. And we're gearing up for the truck event, which is June 11th through the 13th, a couple weeks. And then, as you all know, we just got through Jeep Beach. Successful event, no major problems, and that's all we had to pass along. If there was any questions, I can try to answer.
No, I don't have any questions. Does anybody have any?
Have you noticed a reduction in the number of homeless people on the beachside since the opening of the new shelter?
I don't know that I have that information. I just got reassigned to District 2 about 3 weeks ago, so I wouldn't have been familiar with what was there compared to now. At night shift, we don't see a lot of them. We get some calls for the shelter and safe zone transport and eating, but I couldn't get a proper answer to that, so I wouldn't want to speculate.
Okay, and I was asked by the News Journal. There's we still have at the boardwalk the people are doing those little flowers and try to sell them, for profit or whatever. But
Itinerant vagrancy.
well, that would be vending, itinerant vending, but without a permit.
By the News Journal Center?
What's that?
You said by the News Journal Center?
No. I was interviewed by the News Journal.
Oh.
News Journal, but this happened in front of the boardwalk near the steps
I got
that take you to the
Crab-
pier.
I got you. I can make a note of it and pass it along.
Yeah, no problem. All right, well, thank you. Sorry, last time I forgot, and I held you guys here and I made a note to not forget.
Well protected.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Folks, have a good evening.
Okay. All right, and I see Miss Shelley in the audience. How are you doing? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Reed, do you have a redevelopment project?
I can tell you that right now there is some activity with respect to an RFPs to go out at some point here that would be looking at the possibility of development around the Breakers Park area where we had the Vista Hotel proposed at one time. We had an RFP out. There is another RFP.
Street address, Reed.
Would be at between Harvey and Breakers Park. There's that property there. So I think there's some interest again to revisit that and see if there's an opportunity. Anyway, be watching for that. That's about all I have on the radar right now in terms of some projects. I can tell you this, I think Proto Group, the Russian hotel, that is close to being completed. So they're probably looking at the next few weeks. They have some final things they need to do that's regard to the intersection there and finishing that up. And as long as they can get the DOT approval to do the things that they need to do there, they'll be able to start opening up. And everything inside looks great, so they're good there. This is really just cleaning up some things on the outside.
I'm trying to remember something because I see the construction that's going on Oak Ridge, and are they going to have it so that you could exit westbound from the hotel and go into the parking garage for their valet drivers, or?
Right, and that's the intent.
And
we need to see all the final things signed off.
Okay, so that's why the construction right now is expanding over into the next lane to cause the traffic flow to be in the second, third, and fourth lane instead of the first one, right?
Right. So
Okay.
we'll see. This is the real test to get to that point where they have the okay to do what they need to do and to open. And again, this is only the next step. Actually, having a program where they're going to have some kind of ribbon cutting, any of that, we don't have any information.
But the redevelopment dollars will start to flow.
Well, the
That's
redevelopment
the
dollars,
intent. Yeah.
the redevelopment dollars are from the midpoint of the Oak Ridge to the south.
So the good news is that it's the right side of, which is the south side of Oak Ridge, which means the money is there for the CRA.
Okay, no
Reed,
problem.
has the city completed its commitment to the Proto Group, its financial commitment on, what was it, to expand the water, and was it water and sewer in that whole area that would benefit all those businesses as well? Is that financial deal already completed?
Well, not a financial deal, but it's really a reimbursement.
Reimbursement?
Exactly, and that all occurs.
That's the redevelopment.
But part of that, the key to that is that there's a CO and you have an open hotel. That triggers that, as well as just that all of the work has been signed off on.
So is there a CO?
No, there's what they call a temporary CO that allows them to get some things inside, allow some employees to get in there and start doing
What's the
some.
period of the reimbursement, Reed?
Well, the max I know was 5 years.
5 years.
And so it's the small amount for what they're doing there. I don't have the
Boy,
numbers
it's
in front of me,
terrific.
but
I mean,
yeah,
it'll improve that whole.
yeah.
Okay, while we're talking, what now? Obviously, it's all right for us not to wear masks. Everything's been
Correct. They've lifted that order, so you're still encouraged that if you want to follow the CDC guidelines that are national, that's your choice. But we are not mandating the masks inside.
Well, I removed the mask requirement from the band shell's website and from all advertisements for the Friends of the Band Shell accordingly too,
Right.
That was a difficult thing to enforce, but we were doing it last year.
Did a great job.
Okay, is there anything else?
No, that's it.
Oh, what about the pier? Was the fishing pier is having some construction going on? Or?
There is. There's some construction I understand is going on. I don't have the details of exactly what they're doing. So
Okay. And now, do you want to have a clarification? This meeting was going to be canceled, but me and Reed talked about it, and we had to remember that at the last meeting, it was the sentiment of this board to have a meeting at least every 2 months. And now I'm asking you, because obviously you can see from the agenda, obviously we want to hear from the public and everything, but really there's nothing on the agenda today,
Except our comments, which.
except for our comments. Now, and this is part of our comments. I'm just asking the members of this board, what is your position? Do you want to have a mandatory meeting at least once every 2 months, whether we have an item on the agenda or not?
Yeah, I would suggest that we do, because I think there will be, with a lot of new members on this board who have already discussed some very interesting ideas that are underneath our umbrella of authority, I think there'll be plenty to talk about.
That's fine. Well, I'll start with Teresa. Do you?
I guess because I work all day, I think I lean toward having a specific project to look at, review, and in accordance with our
So-
procedures here, and I guess I'm just oriented that way.
Okay, so you'd like to have an item, you want to have the meeting. Robert, what's your feeling?
I think it'd be good to still have a meeting every 2 months.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I think it would be good to have a meeting every 2 months.
Yeah, 2 months,
What?
Mandatory.
every 2 months.
Every 2 months, okay. All right, I'm sorry, yeah. All right, okay. I mean, this is not a vote thing, this is a just conversation thing.
Just my opinion. Yeah, I think it would be good to have one every 2 months, just in case there is something someone would like to speak on or there's a new idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I know we're not always going to have projects, but things can always be proposed and spoken. Yeah.
Teresa, one of the things I'm very interested in is that this board have an opportunity to look at some opportunities, some matches with the county now that ECHO has been reauthorized for some capital improvements within either one or both of the redevelopment areas. And I would feel better as we start looking into it. This is just in the preliminary starts. There have been some projects that have been on hold, like the park at the end of Main Street since it was purchased. That's a huge opportunity now that 50% of the money might be available through the county. So I think there will be items
Good.
for you.
I like items.
Yeah.
Well, then why don't we direct staff, at the next meeting, that there is no other item, that we visit some of these issues,
Well, maybe when we get to comments by us, we'll have some general areas that we might want to look at. I mean, there are huge opportunities at low involvement, low cost, that could make a huge difference in one or both of the redevelopment areas, to the point where it could impact the whole Beachside in a very positive way. And so, Reed, I guess we'll have to look to you to figure out what would be the process. Do we submit items to you for the agenda, or do we discuss them first? And if we get a plurality or a majority in favor of looking at that item, then it becomes an agenda item. You have to help us shape what would be the best practice way to do that.
Well, I'll make a suggestion. If you ask me to do something, I'll then present it to the city manager, who will ultimately give me direction. And with regards to what's on the agenda, getting it approved,
Sure,
sending it out.
sure.
If there's going to be let's say a series of ideas to put out there from board members, it might be best to have it come back out. I wouldn't want to filter, or if there's going to be some thoughts that you want to bring forward, but simply share those, and we can have a list that we could include if you want to do something like that, and then you go right down a list of ideas.
Yeah, we could just mention the items at this meeting, for example, and then they would be agended for the next meeting, especially if we needed background information like cost or some of the permitting that would be required or some of the other opportunities that are available, because the ECHO project is going to move fast. They haven't had their initial meetings that are required for any applicant to attend, and I'm going to politely suggest that we go through the process of making sure we have somebody from the city representing this board, or just a city rep, at that, to sign in at that meeting, because that's the basic element of eligibility, is to be at the meeting. And I've been, I chaired ECHO for 2 years, for 2 terms, about 8 years, and was involved in the original construction of the program. And honest to Pete, we have some perfect matches for what ECHO is looking for in a part of the city that really has not benefited as dramatically as other parts of the city in outdoor recreation, for example. And we have a lot of outdoor recreation, I think, opportunities. West, in the new parts of the city to the west, where we have just the beginning of parks, all the way to the core of the county, which is the Beachside. Here, we'll call it the pier or the Ocean Center. That's the kind of dead center. There are huge opportunities there. We have National Register districts that run from University Avenue all the way to International Speedway Boulevard. There's a number of different ones. These are national. Some of them are recognized locally. All of them might deserve some sort of signage on the street post that tells you what street it is that you are in a National Register district. I'm not sure everyone realizes Main Street is in a National Register historic district, and it's in a locally recognized district. And I don't think, aside from Pinewood Cemetery, there's any signage on Main Street that would let anyone know that that property is protected by our local ordinance as well as the federal designation. And I think it would value everything up if people knew that. And it could be a very simple, inexpensive thing on the street post. It says Main Street, the National Register of Historic Places. I mean, they're manufactured mass. I think it would be a very low cost, very interesting item that might visually help in a dramatic way. I know the neighborhoods would love it. I can't imagine that the adjacent neighborhoods that have done an awful lot of beautification and restoration of houses and cleanup of yards. I was very impressed. I took a walking tour around there. I think they would benefit from this pat on the back too, and it's such a low-cost, highly visual thing. Everybody who is going anywhere that needs to use a sign would see it. And I think the businesses on Main Street would benefit from it too. It makes it like Beale Street in Memphis, or it makes it like the main drag in Key West, where it's a very similar kind of look, and they have all the International Register signs there. And it invites a whole different audience to participate in what's going on in these areas. So that would be one, for example. What's the cost, and what are we looking at, and how many would we need? It could be done in phases, and it's a very modest thing. The city used to provide bronze plaques for those of us who lived in either a National Register and or locally designated historic house that goes through a whole bunch of series. And then I think the Historic Preservation Board either had their budget cut or they decided not to do it or something.
Reed,
like
would you like an email from Mr. Libby as to what he'd like to, then maybe?
Yeah, I think I think the email's always right,
this
and
is one.
so that we're not going to be here all night, but if for everybody, I think sharing with me, and you can do it on the phone. I don't have to have an email if you want to entrust me with taking the notes, or you can send me the email, which makes it a little clearer, and I will forward that. Again, I'm going to have a new city manager on June 1st.
Yeah.
So keep in mind that the one of the things that will happen is he's getting new information, and then we'll have an opportunity
This
to.
is all just discussion.
Right.
The reason I
right.
would like to discuss it here is because it was always my understanding under Robert's rules that the city has adopted that you can't move on anything unless it's initially introduced to the
well,
board, and the board
I understand, but
decides to move forward.
under Robert's rules, that should be under board comments, and we're, right now, he's making a presentation to us, so.
Well, I agree, and I'm more than willing to wait under board comments, but there was a question that was raised.
No, that's
Whether
fine.
or not we had items, and I'm just
Okay,
suggesting that, yeah.
Reed, are you done with item 4?
I had one thing that I wanted to add very quickly for you, and that is that a couple things have Beaches ISB was approved, just as this board recommended, and the planning board as well. Also, the Main Street tattoo, that project went forward. Now, there was a little bit of a twist at the end, so the question really became not whether or not they should do what they're doing, but whether or not that outside activity of the arts and the music that would occur on their plaza should be something that should be considered for all of Main Street in all of the spaces that are open out there, whether it's a parking lot or some other open space that's not a building, to consider doing something along those lines. And that's going to really be a separate piece of maybe a text amendment.
I think the way it came to us was that it was part of a PUD, so
Exactly.
we could put restrictions on it, but it wasn't like a zoning issue where we opened it up to do whatever,
That's right. And so this was really a request of one of the commissioners to ask the question, why not do something like this along the entire Main Street? And so staff is going to be looking at that, evaluating whether or not something can be done that's different than, say, a TPA out in front of your place on Main Street.
Don't forget about the neighborhood meetings.
And the neighborhood meetings.
Yeah, you're required
Right.
to meet with the neighborhood. They were sort of caught off guard at our meeting here. They testified, Mrs. Ruby testified, that the neighborhood was caught off guard on the outside entertainment component that came into the mix after they had had their
Right.
meeting. So let's involve them again.
Well, it's a text amendment. It's being commission-driven right now. And so staff is charged with coming back.
Now, this text amendment will have, this is for music and, and being able to,
To have activities, pop-up type activities,
But not-
particularly maybe on the weekend. I mean, it's wide open right now
On private property.
on private property, yes.
okay, all right,
Okay? So that's it.
all right.
So
Okay,
would
now
it be
we're
a
on item-
change to the land development code?
It would be a change to land development code if it were to occur. That's my understanding.
Yeah, it would come before this board.
Big change.
No, it would not come before this board unless the commission wanted to have this board look at it, because viewed by this board.
Okay. All right, okay, thanks. Item number 5, public comments. I have a request from Ann Ruby, who's been sitting there patiently.
Ann Ruby, 137 Park Avenue. First thing I want to speak about is as chairman of Beachside Neighborhood Watch. I'm getting a lot of contact from people who are extremely upset about the noise from the streamline. They play loud music all weekend, Sunday afternoons. They have way over amplified. People's houses are shaking. It's been going on for years, and it needs to stop. And I don't know that this board can do anything, but I want this on public record, that the Streamline is not being a good neighbor. They were given vacation, we vacated Coat Street for them. The city has treated them very well, and they are doing a great disservice to the residents who live around their hotel, and it's not right. And that they're getting preferential treatment, quite frankly, and it needs to stop. The other thing I want to talk.
I mean, for what I thought is that the speakers were supposed to be positioned in an eastbound manner, and that the decibel reading could exceed what was 75. Is it 75?
It doesn't matter what the rules are; they're not following them, and
Well,
the
that's the
residents,
code-
the
that's the-
residents
that's
can't,
the-
the residents can't get relief from the police, and they're
Well-
not getting relief from code. They're not getting any relief,
But
and it
there's-
needs to something needs to change.
But if
I
it-
don't want to debate the law with you. I'm just saying something needs to change.
I'm not debating you. I'm saying that if they're in violation, if they're exceeding the decibel level, it should only take a telephone call to the police
Yeah,
officer.
people have been making calls for years, and nothing has gotten resolved. So now they're calling me, and I'm not gonna. It's not no. It's got to. Something's got to change
Okay.
because they're not. It's not a simple phone call. People's houses are
It should
shaking.
Be. It should be, though.
They can't go outside. They cannot enjoy their yards. They can't sleep at night. It's not acceptable, and it should be simple. I agree with you. I agree with you, Dina.
Yeah.
It should be simple.
Yeah.
But it's not, and it's not right.
Okay.
And particularly as the city has, given Eddie Hennessy the vacated Coat Street for him, he got a $25,000 grant for his renovation. I would expect him to be a better neighbor. So that's that topic. The other thing is that Sandy and I took a walk from me up A1A from Main Street to the Ocean Walk, and then back around on the boardwalk. And I have to say that the pavers on A1A are in terrible condition. They're cracked, they're pitted, they're filthy, and I don't think just cleaning them is going to do the job. They're going to need to be replaced, and this CRA has the money to do that. And I would urge this board on your project list to look. I don't think that's going to ever be eligible for ECHO, but we need to spend some money on that so that does not look so bad and tacky. And the other piece was that in general cleaning, some of it is just filth. But like you go down the boardwalk, and the boardwalk itself is very clean, and then the park next to the boardwalk is filthy. The monument, we put up 2 big, beautiful monument signs to Glenn Ritchie. They're covered in mold and mildew. We have that sign for Ed Armstrong they just put up. The whole thing is covered in mold and mildew. It's just not right. And this is the first thing that people see, like one of the main things that people see when they come to our beach, and it's filthy. It looks like the city doesn't care. So if the city doesn't care, why should business owners care? And why should tourists care? They feel free to throw their trash everywhere because it looks like the city doesn't care. And the other big thing, last little rant here, is we have a real problem. We paid to put a lot of pavers in on Main Street. And then the shops have must have been responsible for their own entryways. So you have these pavers, clearly we've spent money, they're grubby and cracked, sorry to say that, but then the entryway themselves are in terrible condition. It's just, there's pitted cement, there's terrazzo showing through skim coats, it's just gum, tobacco, it's just, ugh. And it's like a waste to have put the money in the pavers and then not to have followed through so that the entire apron into the store looks just as good. And I would think that would be a great grant program for all those buildings fronting on Main Street.
Those are code violations. The property owner is responsible from the front of his or her building to the curb to maintain it. So
Well,
that's on my list too of the
Okay.
Main Street after every major event. It needs to be it needs to be steam cleaned and look great instead of seeing the same wads of gum and smoke and chewing
Right.
tobacco and all this stuff. We have the same problem on Seabreeze too.
I don't think that needs to be CRA funds. Like, I think we could do a grant program to help those business owners, the property owners, get the aprons to their stores in great shape and then have them maintain them. But I think we need to either raise fees for the events themselves to cover the cost of that cleaning. That should not come out of our CRA funds. And
I'm not suggesting that it.
so I think there needs to be some serious looking at that. And now I'm done ranting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. We have the same problem with the Hard Rock. When the Hard Rock went in my neighborhood, we met with them, they entertained us. We had a wonderful agreement on how they were going to handle outdoor music. And managers changed about 6 months later, and all of a sudden, every weekend, we have a concert in our National Register Historic District, all the way to Halifax Avenue. You can sing along with the music. And our only thing we could do would be to call the police and accompany the police down there. They have a decibel reader kind of thing, and they would shut it down. An hour later, the music would start again because we don't have any teeth in the ordinance. And maybe we need to start fining properties who are obviously violating ordinances that were conditional upon their having this opportunity to have outdoor entertainment. And the same is true with the streamline. Maybe we need to talk about, 3 strikes and you're out for a period of time. You never hear this in New Smyrna or Winter Park, where there's outdoor music and outdoor entertainment. It's never blared at the level that we have it here. Now, granted, we have at night, we have a breeze that blows, from the east to the west, and it carries, the music can go out like that and comes right back at you, but still, and it's as loud as you're suffering, and I live 5 blocks from A1A. So it's something that we need to look at. I think the commission, you need to get your city commissioner involved in it.
All right. Is there anybody else from the public that'd like to speak? Okay, I guess we are on board comments. Teresa? No? Robert?
I don't have any public comments right now.
Okay. Gary?
Maybe in the future, if we have time and if you feel that it's warranted, we could look at the possibility of some projects that would come from this board, come from our city commission, come from the city, that would involve either CRA funds or the imprimatur of CRA. I'm talking about a park that we paid, was it $3.5 million, Sheila? $2.5 million for a piece of property at the end of Main Street, with a lot of discussion at the time that it could be a kayak or a launch park that would have other outdoor activities for it. It's just the right size. It has wonderful tree cover. The location couldn't really be better for activities in the river. I think I'd like us to bring that maybe through Reed to the new manager. And I think that first we have to discuss it to see whether or not it is the kind of a project we'd like to get behind. But there is a huge amount of money generated by ECHO that's going to go somewhere, and I can't think of a project that would be better for the neighborhood or Main Street. It would have to be very carefully done. We could model it in many ways after what's going to happen downtown on Riverfront Park, which is going to be a whole new experience, as good as any you'll see in the southeastern United States. And there might be some way we could pick up some information from that project, which is coming along dramatically, and as you know, is funded by one individual who lives in Ormond Beach, to the tune of around $25 million, I think will be the final thing. The kayak across the river could be perfect for the park downtown. So I think there's some synergies that we could look at. I'm interested in beautification. Mrs. Ruby, I agree with you. After its special events, and the Pinewood participates in special events by allowing our fence to be used for advertising. We don't do anything in the interior of the cemetery, but we do use the fence. Every time after a special event, I go down there the sidewalks are a mess. You'd think there were horses or cattle on them. And I think it should be part of what we do for special events, that there be a mandatory cleanup and that the event should pay for it. I agree with Mrs. Ruby, it shouldn't come out of our CRA money, but it sure makes our community redevelopment area look terrible.
Almost every other city that has events like that
Yeah.
spray the streets down
You'd
and the
support
sidewalks
that,
down.
wouldn't
And
you?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've lived in New Orleans. So you stand on the sidewalk in New Orleans
too.
at 3 a.m., you're getting sprayed by the
Yeah.
streets. You know, that's just what they do.
Big spray.
Big spray. Yeah. Don't smoke a cigarette on the
Yeah.
sidewalk.
I lived at 933 Royal Street so when I went to graduate school, and you had to not be on Royal Street at that time. So I think that's a very important policy that we could come up with, especially if there is the opportunity for there to be any outdoor activities in other parts of Main Street. All of that really you need to look at it very carefully so that it looks better than after the event than it did before the event. But I agree, Ann. Every time we have the same problem on Seabreeze. We have one or two, like on Main Street, Teresa, we have on Seabreeze one or two businesses that keep the front of their property squeaky clean, and they're out there getting the gum up, and, you know, they're great. But there are whole sections. The Walgreens there, you could have made money collecting the cigarette butts that were in the parking lot there. So maintenance, I think, is something that we might, you know, it's a modest thing. We have a crew on the boardwalk, and every morning that cleans up the boardwalk. It wouldn't be a difficult thing for them to make sure that the monuments that are down there are clean. Because once they're wiped, if they're done weekly, then you wouldn't have the mold buildup. And I know some of the people who work on that crew, and I think they would be more than happy to do it if they're told that's part of their responsibility. I've got some other things, but why don't we wait until for 2 months till our next meeting?
No problem.
And not sort of load it up. Are those ideas that you believe are worth having Reed look into, especially the historic markers thing? We started doing that, Reed. We have, the county has 69 National Register sites. Daytona Beach has 29 of the 69. We have the largest component of any city in Volusia County. Parts of the county are very well marked historically. DeLand, New Smyrna Beach are very well marked. We started to do that here. And we had other responsibilities that were greater, and so things sort of backed off.
I'll tell you on that one, I'm gonna go ahead and just make that referral back to the historic board.
Okay.
So that will be the next thing that we do, and they can decide. They do have resources, and we'll find out if that's something of interest to what they do, because it's in their domain.
Well, kind of, but it's also marketing it's also redevelopment of our city.
That I understand.
Yeah, as well.
Right.
The Historic Preservation Advisory Board does bronze markers. That's to the degree they've gone. They don't like to get involved in the traffic sign thing, although several of our National Register and local districts have their own signage on public property as you drive in and as you drive out of. The Motion Dunes is a good example of one. We could do that in our area, the University Seabreeze one, because we have public property, the turnaround areas that are landscaped, but not all parts of the city could.
Well, I may have Steve Bapp, who's our staff for the Historic Preservation Board, give you a call and maybe
Terrific.
have that discussion.
I think that money, there's going to be a need, as one of our leading citizens in Daytona Beach and Ormond Beach has said, when you have a problem, just remember it's all about the green, and he's not an environmentalist. He's talking about money. So I think don't be surprised if the historic board likes it, but might request some help.
All right.
Okay. And by the way, Commissioner McKay, I'm sorry, earlier I messed up on your name, and I'm, sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, I guess one of our board members, Krista, just came in, and would you like to make any comments to the board?
Hi, sorry I'm late.
Okay, no problem.
I told Reed I'd be
That was
late.
short and sweet, okay. And real quick, Reed, there was, I know that in Oceanfront Park, we used to have a playground right there on the south side, and I guess it's always been a maintenance issue, and and then it was completely removed. But now it's just sand. I don't know. Is there? Can we look at having? Since we're talking about spending some kind of non-metal playground, something that's like all plastic, where it's not the beach is not going to turn around, tear it apart. And
We had
stuff
a
like that.
pirate ship, I know.
What?
A pirate ship.
We had a pirate
that
ship, then we
kids
had
love.
another item. We had like two different types of playground, but all of them involved a lot of metal, and the metal became sharp, and then it started, became dangerous and stuff like that.
Even
And-
the plastic
What?
in this environment will turn brittle
Yeah.
and break. So you just have to be careful on the product.
Have
what
to
you
be
pick.
maintained.
Now, every November, and you know this, I always invite you to an IAPA show in Orlando, and they have plenty of playgrounds that are exterior to choose from. And if you want to go this November, I'll get you a pass. And I am confident that there will be one that will be compatible to our conditions here in Daytona Beach. And if you cannot go there, I will definitely be there, and I will bring some literature back for you.
Okay, got that on there.
And I think that I'm just going to call the adjourn.
No. Why don't you ask if there's anything else any member of the board would like to?
No, every board member, I went through board comments, and every board member had a comment.
I have prepared 2 pages that are 2 editorials that I wrote, one about landscaping in the city and one about outdoor itinerant vending. And both of the Urban Land Institute study that was done on Main Street, we couldn't find a copy of it. And I think the board was interested in what the recommendations were. And if it's permissible, I'd like to share with Reed that these are public record in the News Journal. Both of them appeared. And they just sort of sum up
Yeah, no
some
problem.
of the.
Let's pass them around.
Why I beat up on the poor doctor who came here asking for help on his project on International Speedway Boulevard, you'll be able to tell.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Meeting is now adjourned.